Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So in the chat, I'd love for everyone to be able to join, share your name, what industry you're in, and what you're doing today. So I'm Sheena Fowler. I'm the CEO of Innovate Orlando. Innovate Orlando is a nonprofit in the Central Florida area that is the chief storyteller and strategic driver of our technology ecosystem. So we are creating new groups, peer groups, driving our startup economy, talking about talent, and doing more events and programming like this, highlighting the extraordinary work of technology in Central Florida. This morning, we are going into one of the buzziest terms in tech right now, dual use. But before your brain starts filling up with acronyms and procurement pathways, let me ground you in something very Orlando. In 1963, the Florida Technological University, now UCF, was founded to train engineers for the space race. Not long after, Walt Disney showed up with a radically ambitious idea to build a city of the future. This was a blueprint for immersive environments powered by technology, logistics, and just a little bit of imagination. This is Orlando's origin story, not just dreams, deliverables, not just ideas, but infrastructure. So when we talk about dual use technology, these are solutions that serve national security in high growth industries. We're not jumping on a trend. This is something that Orlando's been doing for over 60 years. Defense meets entertainment, simulation meets storytelling, and human performance meets scalable deployment. So this morning, you're going to hear from companies in the Orlando region that are navigating real-world path from idea to prototype to procurement, and why this approach to innovation is more relevant than ever. So let's get into it. I'm going to let everybody introduce yourself briefly and tell me your name, your title, and a little bit about your company. So let's start with you, Cassie.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on a Tuesday morning. My name is Cassie Muffley, and I'm with the Defense Innovation Unit. For those of you who may not be familiar with DIU yet, so we report directly to the Secretary of Defense. We have been tasked with accelerating the adoption of commercial technologies at speed and scale for the department. My role within the organization is I am the program director for a program called the Defense Innovation OnRamp Hubs. We have 5 locations nationwide so far. Current locations include Kansas, Ohio, Washington State, Arizona, and Hawaii. This summer, we're opening 3 more locations in Kentucky, Montana, and Minnesota. And I'm also here, though, I'm a Orlando resident, a big believer in all of the great things that are happening here within the Orlando tech community. So we're really excited to be a part of this panel and have the opportunity to chat with y'all today.
Thanks, Cassie. Joanne, how about you?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Joanne Archer. Happy to be here. Thanks for joining. I work for a company called Design Interactive, located here in Orlando. And Sheena, I loved your Orlando origin story. I feel like it paralleled my career quite a bit. I started here back in the 90s in the Central Florida area, working for NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. Graduate school at UCF, and now here I am in the simulation and modeling corridor working for our small business Design Interactive. So it's neat to see how that all grows, how it all comes together, and I love that story and the way you told it. At Design Interactive, we empower people with innovative technology in the DoD sector, commercial sector, government sector. One thing that, because we're talking about dual use today, that our XR team specifically is focused on is a dual use XR application that digitally transforms human performance across the learn, practice, execute continuum. And my role at Design Interactive is I'm the XR portfolio manager, as well as the deputy director for RDT&E. So happy to be here. Can't wait for the conversation.
Thanks, Joanne. Brandon?
Good morning. I'm Brandon Nade, CEO and co-founder of Talon Simulations. And I also have a similar backstory, just being a UCF student studying mechanical engineering. and we built a virtual reality flight simulator for our senior design project. And with how the community comes together in modeling and simulation and entertainment, the exposure we got during our showcase led us to launching it into a business venture. And we just have been around the last 10 years building simulator solutions for both the amusement industry and military simulation industries, just showcasing how our hardware is modular, reconfigurable, and just very easy to adapt to different applications. So we couldn't have done it anywhere else besides the Orlando region and wouldn't want to.
Love it. And last but not least, Kevin, Uncle Fessler, full transparency. This is one of my favorite bosses of all time. No pressure, Uncle. Go ahead.
No pressure. Well, in full transparency, really, everyone at Red 6 worked for Sheena when she was there. She basically ran the company as the de facto CEO. Well, good morning to everyone. Kevin Fessler, my call sign is Uncle. I was a career Air Force for 26 years, flew fighters during that time. And then following that career, I found my way to Red 6 via our founder, Dan Robinson. Dan was a UK citizen at the time. He came to fly the F-22 with me. He was the first non-US citizen to be able to fly the Raptor. So we stayed connected. And after I retired, Dan had founded Red 6, and he asked me to come on board. I'm the chief strategy officer at Red 6 after 4 years as the chief revenue officer, where, again, I was fortunate to work with Ms. Fowler. Red 6 is a hardware-enabled software company that works in the augmented reality space, and I'm sure we'll get into that more, the nuances between AR, VR, XR, MR. I can quite honestly tell you that 4 years ago when I came to work for Red 6 as a career fighter pilot, I really didn't know the difference, but I knew that we had an opportunity to make the training ecosystem better in my beloved Air Force, and then more broadly across the DODs and MODs of the world, and then into dual use. We found our way to Orlando via Sheena. We originally were based in California, and we moved our headquarters to Orlando a few years ago. We're about a mile from the UCF, the center of campus. And then we have our operations and aircraft based at Orlando Executive. So we have been incredibly pleased with the ecosystem that we've moved into in Orlando, and particularly the engineers that we've been able to bring into the company from UCF. So I'm pleased to be here this morning, Sheena. Thanks for asking.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. And just a quick reminder for the chat, I'm curious, what does everybody think dual use means? What does that come to mind? Pop that in the chat right now. So let's start with what dual use actually looks like on the ground, because it's not about just putting a military use case on a commercial product or vice versa. It's about really solving problems in high stakes environments and with the flexibility to scale. So Cassie, let's start with you. At DIU, you see a wide range of technology. What kinds of solutions are actually in demand right now, and what makes a company or product stand out?
Well, right now it's commercial solutions that are in demand. I think we've been seeing this across the department really for the past 5 years. The department has been recognizing we need to be more closely tied in with industry. I think we've all heard and seen the statistics about, the government used to be the primary funder of R&D, and now private industry is funding the vast majority of R&D. Really drives the need for us to be working more closely with industry. As I mentioned earlier, that's DIU's whole mission, is advancing the adoption of commercial technologies at speed and scale, with the purpose of deterring conflict. I needed an extra cup of coffee today. Or when forced to fight. So from our perspective, what makes a company really stand out beyond just being, having cool commercial capability is the second half of that mission statement is, enabling us to defer conflict or win if forced to fight. Part of DIU 3.0 strategy that came out last year is a increased focus on COCOM problems. Not saying that other parts of the military aren't important and don't need technology. Absolutely do. DIU has just gotten hyper-focused on supporting COCOM problems and needs.
Can you tell us, what does COCOM mean?
Oh, that is a fantastic question, Sheena. Thank you for calling me out. Combatant command.
At Red 6, Uncle had to deal with me quite a bit asking these questions. I was like, okay, and that means what?
I appreciate it. Please feel free to call me out the whole rest of the day.
You know, I think that's what's exciting is part of this ecosystem. We dive in and out of these different industries, and getting to know each other's vernacular is important. So, Joanne, let's turn to you. You've seen so many different prototypes in your career. When someone says we're ready, what tells you that this is actually something that's ready to go out into the field?
That's a great question. So, you know, you build a lot of the innovation technology comes from like small business innovative research contracts, right? So we start with the phase 1, then we build a prototype with the phase 2, and then you got to get over that valley of death, right? So you can even secure some transition funding. But what really gets you fielded is that customer, right? You have to have the sustainment funding. Do I have the answer for how to get that sustainment funding? I don't think anyone on this call has that secret, you know, sauce of how to do that. But here's some things that we found that are helpful, right? In order to get that sustainment funding, getting end user feedback, quantitatively measured, that can demonstrate ROI. You know, no one's going to buy your product if you can't demonstrate ROI. That would be one thing. Another thing would be a deployment strategy. You know, if I look at a prototype, whether it's within Design Interactive or somebody else, do you have a deployment strategy? Do you know what kind of hardware this is going to sit on? What network is it going to be on? Is it RMF compliant? All those kinds of things are super important. But ahead of all of that, you really need to get that sustainment funding. And let me also be clear about, it's not just about getting palmed, right, in the government, right? It could also be at smaller scale. You know, it could be at the squadron level. It doesn't have to be necessarily palm funding, because that could take a really long time.
Yeah, and as we're on these acronyms, can you spell out POM?
Ooh, program of record. I actually knew that. I thought I was going to need a phone a friend there, but
thank you. And Brandon, as you were talking about, you started right out of school, out of UCF, right? And you developed this flight simulator, and you made that shift in from defense applications into entertainment. And it's been a wild ride to watch all of your success. Congratulations on everything. What did you have to change? What had stayed the same as you volley between these two industries?
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of it was just following the market, learning from mentors, and interacting with people. And we learned a lot just from what we were developing for people. And since we build solutions, every project is a little bit different. Even it's just like what virtual reality headset works best for this customer, and is it a portable solution, or is it something that can remain permanent? So can we use a desktop PC, or do we need to use a laptop? And fortunately, one of the big overlaps between both of those markets is they're high throughput, high demand environments. There's just a low threshold for things breaking down, so it needs to be easy maintenance. It just needs to be reliable. And once we develop the hardware platform into something that can meet the demands of the amusement industry, it really flowed and adapted well into the military training space. And what we really needed to swap out was the software. So that makes it pretty easy to go back and forth between both of those markets and reconfigure our products for whatever use case that comes our way. And so, yeah, it shows how modular the technology is. And especially with virtual reality, you don't need replica cockpits anymore and large expensive domes, and you could take one base platform. And we've done this before where you can be on our simulator and you can be driving a tactical vehicle, go into the water, driving a boat, and then the next thing you know, you press a button and you're flying a helicopter. So it's just pretty wild experience. Not really many use cases for that, but it just shows that it's very easy to adapt.
Well, I wandered over to your booth at ITSEC this year and got to play with some of the toys that you had out on the floor. So thanks for showing that. And Uncle, let's move on to you and Red 6. There's no doubt that Red 6 builds in a very high performance space. What are some of the challenges in designing that meets DoD expectations? And certainly with your background as a pilot, you know what these stakes are. What are the things that you've discovered with Red 6?
Well, I'll start off with the no surprise. Working with my beloved Department of Defense can be incredibly challenging. The federal acquisition regulation is 2 volumes over 11,000 pages. And so it's an onerous process, by design. And so you have to be ready for that, not only to navigate it, but what will be the inevitable delays of, getting on a contract. So making sure that you're funded appropriately to get yourself to a place where the tech will be ready when the customer is ready, if you will, which can be a challenge because none of us have a crystal ball, or if you do, let me know how much it costs to take a hit on that once in a while. So that's the challenge. And then the rigor of our tech, because it is inserted in high performance aircraft, right? You go through a number of certifications, whether it's surety levels that are required by anything that flies in the FAA in the US or other, aviation authorities in foreign countries, as well as the ejection seat qualification. I mean, clearly as someone who flew ejection seat airplanes for all those years, I don't want to wear any piece of kit that's going to create a higher risk if you do have to unfortunately eject. So those are very rigorous, and they should be processes. And as a company, you have to figure out how you're going to navigate that. Is it something you go out and hire all of these experts organically? Do you bring in 1099s? Do you hire other firms? And it can be a very labor intensive process, but required along the way. And so I think the biggest, if I was giving someone a piece of advice, is just that you need to go into that process with your eyes wide open. I mean, the engineers are incredible at developing the tech, but we didn't hire them to also figure out the paths to this certification, if you will, for insertion into the high performance aircraft. And so we've navigated that with a number of offshoots and a lot of great people helping us out to get ourselves to a point, right, where we'll be able to slap the table and say, this is ready to be flown in a high performance airplane, as we're doing now. So thanks.
Awesome. So speaking of traction, let's move into what happens now that you have the prototype and you're moving into procurement. Quick update for the chat. If you've ever applied for a SBIR, go ahead and drop us a note. If you're curious about it, go ahead and start that conversation too. We'll jump in there as we continue to go along. So Cassie, can you give us a real world example of a company that came through the Defense Innovation Unit and made it work? What made them stand out? How can we learn from this?
Thanks. I actually have an Orlando success story that would love to share today. So it's actually similar to how Brandon got his start. DIU has a variety of different programs. I think we're best known for, our CSO process, working with companies who have technology that are ready to go, getting them on contract quickly. But last year, as part of that DIU 3.0 strategy, when capabilities from INSIN, the National Security Innovation Network, and INSIC, National Security Innovation Capital, merged into DIU. I'm getting better at this, Sheena.
Good job.
It allowed us to, expand the kind of scope of companies that we were able to support. So one of my favorite examples is a company called Zoolaris. Bunch of UCF students who took a class called Entrepreneurship for Defense. We worked with a local military partner who submitted their problem statement over the course of the semester. They were trying to solve for creating a better virtual training for electromagnetic spectrum warfare training. I'm getting really good at this new acronym stuff. And, so they started out in one class, went really well. They wanted to keep going with it. they didn't have the technical abilities to do all of the coding to build it. So then they worked with another cohort of students who did a senior capstone project to continue to advance the prototype that they had built in the first class. And they have continued to use different resources and within DIU to advance their company. And last year they secured their first DoD contract.
Wow.
So we are very proud. And like I said, that's a homegrown Orlando story.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Really, really cool. So, Cassie mentioned Brandon, you had a similar path. Can you tell us about that early stage when you started to get into this process and contracting, and maybe give a little bit more light to the folks that Cassie was talking about? What did that experience look like for you, and how did you rise to the occasion?
It definitely all began with Small Business Development Center resources and seminars on SBIRs and government contracting. And another great Orlando resource is being able to sit down with someone at the SBDC and talk about your business and get feedback. So that was way at the beginning, way early on. We also were still students, so we got mentored at the UCF Blackstone Launchpad, which is still around, great resource. But just having the exposure to what it's going to take for federal contracting, and I believe at one of those, I learned it takes about 10 SBIR submissions before you can get really your first one. Like, that's the odds. And especially now, it's more competitive than ever. But going through that process, whether you end up winning one or not, is extremely valuable, because you learn every aspect of writing proposals and doing the budgeting for a federal contract. And I think it's definitely helpful to go through that process, and you see it as a learning experience. I mean, especially that you got phase 1 SBIRs, and then there's direct to phase 2s, which are a lot harder to get. And just going through that whole system, it helps prepare you for when you do get to either FAR-based contracts, or now people are trying to use OTAs a lot more, which other transaction authorities, which are mutually beneficial for government and industry, because it just moves things along a lot quicker. So we never actually won a SBIR, but we had submitted for several. And I believe, like, once we finally got around to getting government contracts, it was more streamlined, because we understood how do you read the proposal instructions, or the RFP or the request for white paper, and pay attention to all those details, make sure you're hitting all the requirements, make sure you're doing the budgeting properly. And so I think that all led us into being more successful at that phase, because we were familiar with the process and all of the paperwork.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that process, Joanne, you've seen this time and time again. In your opinion, what helps a prototype move from that early testing phase to the full operational deployment? And you're on mute, my friend.
Thank you. I want to build on what Brandon said earlier, the modular-based architecture. I think that's key. And then also what Cassie said about the commercial, the dual use, right? The more commercial offering. So if you take those two together, I think that's what really gets you from that prototype to operational. So if you build modular, right? So you're not building for a specific use case for a specific SBIR. You address the problem with the SBIR, but as you're doing that, you're building modular. So you can use that technology across not just the domain, but you could build on that technology and add to it. In addition to that, if you start with maybe something you've built and you've commercialized it, and you start there with that commercial offering, and then you can build the new innovation onto that, that can also set you up for a good operational deployment. I think those two things are key. I know we have a lot of XR representation here, but one example I would note in the XR space is building an XR framework at Design Interactive that, started in one domain and now is commercially in other domains, and government and other domains has been really successful for us. We've also done similar stuff with an operational stress index and a knowledge ontology, just kind of taking that technology that was basically, living that SBIR process the way it's intended. I think that's super key to get to operational.
Oh, fantastic. And Uncle, Red 6 builds really futuristic tech. Can you share what that process has been like since you've been with the company almost from the beginning? There's a lot of different bumps that you were going to find along the road, going from, we know this is the concept, to actually being able to deploy it. When I first saw the technology, it was a real video. I think that's what threw me, that you see so often early in the SBIR process, these are just concepts and ideas. And when Red 6 got out into the world, it was real footage of what the technology was capable of doing out in the world. Can you share what that process has been?
Well, as you know, there's certainly challenges along the way, but one of the beautiful things about a startup is that, every success is shared in a very small, intimate group, and it's incredibly exciting. You can move fast. And of course, every failure, again, you're sharing it with a very small, intimate group, and that helps you get through it as well. So there's certainly been challenges. I think if I think back to the beginning of something that is truly, revolutionary, being able to train against these entities in high G environments, outdoor daylight conditions, right? I mean, right now we're one of companies in the world that can do this, and I'm sure that others will catch up eventually. But a lot of it came down to education. If you show up within the Department of Defense and you have a capability without a requirement, it's incredibly challenging to get funding. If they put out an RFP and they say, we want this capability, and you show up with that capability, then you're in the fight right from day one. But if you show up and go, look, I have this incredible capability, and believe me, you're going to need it, or you need it now, but there is no capability out there, trying to work through the education of truly this technology fills a capability gap, is just that. It's an education process, and it is small to big to small. I mean, from briefing at the highest levels of OSD to the 4 stars, down to the captains and majors that are flying the tech, and the sergeants that are fixing the tech. So it was a massive education. I would say that was a large undertaking. And then the single biggest hurdles we've come across is when funding would get removed short notice, which is very common within the Department of Defense. I know you were with me on this journey, but we had a year where we 75% of our expected revenue disappeared. Now, unintended consequences, right? There was an issue in Ukraine, so everyone took a 50% haircut, and then we had another contract that we were in the final stages, if you will. A task order had been issued, it had been approved, and that money disappeared. And so as a company, that a small startup, as everyone who's gone through this, that can be existential. So I would say that there are certainly hurdles. Funding has been our largest, but right behind it is just an education of explaining to your intended audience how this capability will help them with whatever it is. There's a number of problems that it could solve, whether it saves funding, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, increases readiness, the list goes on. But again, if you show up with a capability that has not been vetted as a requirement, you need to be ready to put on your school teacher hat and go to work, which, yeah, that's a good question, Sheena. Thank you.
Yeah, and anyone else want to weigh in on that, like a tactical thing where things just shifted? Because there's no doubt this process is not easy. It is not for the faint. You have to really trust in your technology. What's something that helped you guys get over a bump in the road?
I'll speak on that because it demonstrates the importance of dual use technology and being in multiple market verticals. And these days more than ever, we even see that our government customers are excited to work with us because we have commercial business, understanding that there are these cycles, there are sometimes these issues that occur, and they want to make sure that you have a robust business and you'll still be around when inevitably stuff like that happens. And it can be very existential and ruin a small business because it's money that you expect to come in. So for us, I think we've been very fortunate to been around for 10 years, make it through the pandemic, because we've been able to go back and forth between different markets. And so that is important. You don't want to go too far away from your core product and your niche, but when you do have technology that's applicable across markets, it's very important to diversify in this economy more than ever.
Yeah. Joanne, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I really, I just want to echo what Brandon said. I mean, we talked earlier about, I mentioned the modular approach. I mean, yeah, you have to be able to, we've had similar situations where, even proposing an idea, you get awarded, and then, there's that little delay between proposal and award. And now that idea doesn't really make sense. So you have to pivot, right?
Yeah.
And in order to pivot, you have to have a structure in place that allows you to do that. So yeah, really just echoing Brandon, what you said. It's really helped us out too.
Perfect. So it's a great transition. Let's talk about the conditions that help make innovation stick, and how companies and all of you have decided where to grow from. So Joanne, if you can keep going, what kind of ecosystem conditions help make these dual use deployments possible? What things do you Design Interactive lean on to make sure the company is continuously being able to scale and grow?
So I think the biggest thing is, let's talk about Orlando for a minute, right? Because we kind of started out that way, and that's near and dear to my heart. The safe ecosystem is really helpful, right? So when we talk about dual use, we think of the Cold War and, oh no, some of the technology we're developing really shouldn't be in the civilian world. But, in Orlando, a lot of what we're doing, especially in the XR space, is perfectly aligned for dual use, right? It's in the entertainment industry, the same kinds of scenarios we're developing, or the technology we're developing in these immersive environments. That technology can be easily applied dual use to the other sectors in Central Florida and, elsewhere as well. So I think that's a key ecosystem that we are so fortunate to have here. I think somebody else mentioned, I can't remember who, but the collaboration in this ecosystem is there also. Starting at the Kennedy Space Center years ago, the owner of our company, that's how she got to Central Florida, is working at the Space Center. And now here she is with a company in the Central Florida Sim and Mod area. And then somebody else mentioned, recruiting these fantastic technical young people. FIA, the Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy in downtown Orlando, just produces the best, video game experts that, their dream is to, start a video game someday, but hey, they are great working in our industry. Fantastic developers, and so forth. So I think we have a incredible ecosystem here.
Yeah, you pointed out something. When you look at FIA, UCF, for a long time, it was just a game. It was just games, right? That's what they solely thought of. And as the industry has expanded, we now see that those game engines are the backbone of a lot of the different experiences and multitude of different industries. Uncle, we spent a lot of time together going from, and I was the oddball on the team. I was the only pilot on the non-pilot on the business development team, and worked through the Disney Accelerator. From your perspective, what was it like to see those synergies, right, between what you had grown up with the military and now looking at a entertainment use case? What was that process like for Red 6?
Well, I think from a personal and a professional perspective, is incredibly exciting, right? I mean, I understood the Department of Defense, ecosystem, that space, and how we were going to revolutionize, training in military aircraft. What I understood far less, even using the phone a friend with Miss Fowler, was the gaming industry or the entertainment industry, you know, the Disneys and Merlins of the world, or the, you know, the Red Bull Air Racing, or all these commercial entities that could use this level of training. I didn't, you know, I didn't understand it, so it was exciting to learn that and to, you know, participate in that and see how our technology did span across, you know, into a non-military use case. And then another on the equally on the professional side, right, as someone who was responsible for, you know, revenue for the company and business development, to shore that up with something other than a single use case or a single entity, if you will, a single service in the military or one department, to be able to expand that was certainly very important, you know, for the company as you begin to scale, and more importantly, to, you know, to show value internal to the company, whatever the long-term plan is for a company, whether it is to be acquired, to continue to expand, to do something like a SPAC or an IPO. You know, all of that is looked at by the larger industry with regards to value. And so being able to expand out into a dual use, into the commercialization of that, was very exciting professionally for the company and brought massive value. So all in all, it was with trepidation I stepped in, and then, you know, I was very excited, you know, to see how our technology was accepted within those communities.
It was just a quick side. It was really extraordinary to see, you know, going from the very specific use case for military, and I think Disney gave Red 6 about 2 weeks to turn everything over for the accelerator, and the physics were the same. You know, the technology stayed the same, but they switched out all of the art and turned it into a Star Wars experience. And it was extraordinary to see how the engineering team could flip that over, but the foundation was the same. That was when it really struck me that you have this capability of going back and forth. And Brandon, that's something you've done. You guys go from Dave and Buster's into, you know, marine applications. And so when did you know that your team at Talon was positioned to go beyond this, you know, student project that you launched into something?
I believe that the way it worked out was for the best, because it was 2014. We were all very excited about this new wave of virtual reality, and people kind of forget that VR was trying to make it into both of these industries over the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So it had a negative connotation around it, especially in the military. It's like, we've tried this before, it doesn't work. So not only are we trying to educate people on new technology, but already fighting a stigma around it. And it was a slow burn. I mean, everyone saw like, hey, that it could be really big now, and I mean, it made sense, and look where it is now. But it took a while for the market to grow. So we're in a new market. We're trying to educate people on it. So for us, there wasn't like a big jump to need to scale right away in the first couple of years. And in 2018 was when we got to do a big deployment with Dave and Buster's. And once that was a big success, it allowed us to really scale our business properly, and not just like really quickly, and adapt our hardware and the technology in general to make it more robust and ready for the big time. So and going from that, we segued into doing bigger military deployments really through the pandemic, which that goes back to what I was kind of talking about, is like every entertainment center shut down in 2020. You know, we lost basically that whole industry. And then we worked with entertainment centers in every state, just working through those regulations in every state was wild between 2020 and 21. And we knew we had to be able to focus our efforts now more into the government. And it was a good timing, because that industry was starting to see the potential of virtual reality. There was now studies showing the effectiveness of VR in training, and that really worked out. So it wasn't so much so that we knew we were ready. It took longer than I think we anticipated for the market to get to that point. And really, it's just been like every year things have just gotten bigger, and I think it shows where the industry is as a whole.
So, Cassie, at DIU, you guys have been working on some new tools to help some of the examples that we've heard today, right? Like there's an education layer that you really have to make sure people understand, and they're not looking at this one piece of tech and at face value, but they understand the full breadth of it and the power of an ecosystem. Can you share a little bit about what ecosystems can be doing better and maybe some tools that DIU has launched recently that can help?
Yeah, absolutely, Sheena. And I love hearing all of this because it's exactly what I was going to say. Be working together and across your local ecosystem, looking for those adjacent industries that you may think that's not really us. But again, it's you all have incredible technologies and capabilities, being creative about what all of the different things that it could potentially be used for. The other thing on that, though, is looking outside of your local ecosystem for those opportunities and making those meaningful connections across the country with different ecosystems who are doing different similar things. I'll plug my tool first. The OnRamp hubs. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, you can reach out to us, and we'll help you get connected. So I heard a lot today. Some of the challenge sometimes is getting that buy-in from your right government customer. Sometimes it's finding your government customer. Really, ideally, you need to find your end user and the organization who has the funds, because they are not the same people. Oftentimes, they don't even know each other. OnRamp hubs can help make some of those connections and they'll help individual companies with some of that mapping strategies, that sort of thing. And it's fully funded. We're here to help. But the tool that I want to talk about that I'm most excited about that's launching this summer is our digital OnRamp. So it is a digital tool that you can use to find those different opportunities. It's AI enabled. You put in your company information. DoD can put in their information of what they're looking for. During our initial test runs, I think it was back in December, we actually had one company who, through this platform, and what it basically does is aggregating this information from multiple sources. Most folks who work in government contracts understand you need to go to sam.gov to look at opportunities, but there's a plethora of other websites that post opportunities, including DIU. We post all of our opportunities on our website. This tool will search all of those websites for you, utilize AI algorithms to help recommend different opportunities that may be right for you. Back to the initial test that we did, there was one company who found an opportunity that they were not aware of, would not have found it otherwise, proposed and won the contract. And that's a win on both sides. It's a win for the company, but it's also a win for the department, because that means that now we're getting access to more companies across the country, doing a better job of getting our needs out there and not having only access to the companies in our backyard who know about us and our capabilities.
Awesome. Okay, so we are coming up. I can't believe it's gone this fast, but I want everyone who's online, start thinking about some questions, drop them in the chat. We'll see them. We'll get to them in just a little bit, but I want to follow up on this. You mentioned, looking outside ecosystems, but if we could look, magic wand moment, right? Let's pretend we get $10 million to support our ecosystem. What's something you would want to fix? Something you would want to see that money go towards? And I'm going to challenge this both to those on the panel, but drop that in the chat too. What would you do with this $10 million magic wand? Joanne, is there something you'd like to see that we could improve in our community?
I think I would say $10 million. Wow, that's a lot. I would like to see some infrastructure or platform or some kind of integration capability. I feel like there's, even on this call, probably on this panel, we have a lot of awesome technology and they're just slightly different. And if there was some kind of integration place for that technology to live and work together, I think that would be a great investment, and that would definitely be rewarding, and the ROI on that for the customer, whether that's government or DoD or commercial, could take advantage of that. But it's an infrastructure that someone's got to really own.
Right. Brandon, what about you? Any $10 million thoughts?
The first thing that comes to mind is really in all the work we do, having a proof of concept or a prototype is so important to show people rather than pitching an idea. And for small businesses, it can be really hard to have internal R&D funding to build out every concept that you can build, that you can showcase and apply your technology to. And I really do think the Epic Mega Grant program is really helpful. It gives funding for people to build software applications in the Unreal Engine and bring your concept to life. And so I think having like little grants to help people build out their concepts and into something tangible that you can show to people would be really helpful. It's not cheap to program stuff. I mean, it's getting easier these days, but to really set yourself apart, you really need a team of people to help you to build new ideas and concepts. So I think that would be really valuable to the local ecosystem.
Great. And Cassie, I mean, you look at these ecosystems, thankfully we get you here, right, as home base, but what's something you've seen in other ecosystems that we could really level up here in Central Florida?
That's a great question, Sheena. I think I'm going to double down on my previous comment about really being intentional about building relationships with other ecosystems that we can really learn from. To your point, there's a lot out there. So I had mentioned previously that one of my hubs is located in Hawaii. And the more that I learn about that ecosystem, the more I recognize they have a lot of the same challenges building up their tech ecosystem as Orlando does, being a location that's known for tourism.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that we can learn there, as well as if we just think more broadly of the concept of, ecosystems for a second. A lot of times in business development and economic development, when we're talking about ecosystems, we're talking about a local collection of entity and resources, but ecosystem inspired by nature, ecosystems thrive only when we have healthy migration patterns and cross-pollinations. There are things moving in and out, and there are connections between different ecosystems in nature to, keep them healthy. And I think that we need to be more intentional about networking some of these key ecosystems, and then even looking internally. There's a bunch of micro ecosystems across Orlando. How do we even network across Orlando in a better, more intentional way?
Oh, I love that. Okay, let's go into a bit of a lightning round. 1 sentence per question, quick responses. And I'll start with you, Joanne. What's one piece of advice for someone building something powerful, but not yet thinking about dual use?
Building on what Brandon said, a good demo that can show impact across use cases.
Brandon?
I think that's a tricky one. Because I think in general, it's always, I always go to one piece of advice being pursuing your passion and just going with that. But also make sure you're addressing a solution. So get out there, meet people, talk to people in the industry, learn as much as you can, get feedback, but make sure you're going down a path that you're passionate about.
All right, Cassie?
Ask questions and get help often. There's so many different resources. A lot of them are free that we've heard, on this call today. Brandon going to the small business office. I saw Carol Ann in the chat talking about the company that I had mentioned, Zoolaris, in addition to utilizing DIU resources to get help, they were also working with the Tech Grove, and they're an incubator client. There are so many resources out there to help companies think through these things. We want you all to win.
Awesome. All right. One sentence response. What's one myth about dual use tech that you would love to bust? Go in the same order. Joanne, Brandon, Cassie. Joanne?
Well, I already mentioned the myth about the major threat, the dual use posing a major threat. So to be different, I would say that your form factor, I don't know if this is a myth officially, but that your form factor doesn't matter, because it does matter, right? Like how you're going to deploy your technology does matter, and it may not be the same DoD, government, and commercial. So I would definitely focus on thinking about that.
Brandon, one myth about dual use tech that you'd love to bust?
Well, I believe as small businesses, and I touched on this a little bit before, it's really important to not spread yourself too thin and to have a niche that you dominate, and that really helps you scale your business to to a variety of different applications. But yeah, focusing on that niche, but then realizing that there's different ways to market that and to commercialize, or I guess monetize what you're doing, because it is really important to diversify. So I wouldn't say just do one thing specifically. Make sure you are targeting other ways, to grow your business as well.
Cassie, a myth you want to bust about dual use?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this myth that it only applies to certain applications such as AI or drones or modeling and simulation. Some of the technology that we're seeing actually a lot out of our Kansas and Ohio hub started out as farming equipment.
Interesting. Uncle, what's a myth about dual use technology that you think people need to know about?
Yeah, thanks, and sorry for the issues. I could hear all your wonderful questions and comments as I put on my IT hat and fixed my laptop here real time. From my individual perspective, I think the myth I would like the commercial side to understand is that there is a way to monetize, and I heard Brandon mention that. We got a lot of pushback, as you remember in the beginning, Sheena, with the commercial side indicating that the military application must be at a price point where you couldn't make any money, where there was no margin and any ability to monetize it across the commercial market. And so there were those who wouldn't, I won't say they wouldn't take a meeting, but they came in with blinders on, really with kind of a negative overtone of this is not going to work for us because we have to scale this to be able to make money. And so I think that because of the way we were initially marketed and branded as a militarily only use. So I certainly think that on the commercial side, being open-minded about the ability to cross those two ecosystems.
Perfect. So, okay, last lightning round. What's something that you're working on in your company right now that you're extremely proud of that you want to brag about? Lightning round, Joanne, go for it.
So I think I mentioned it earlier, but we have an XR application that is currently dual use. It's in multiple domains. We're adding some really awesome capability to it that puts the tech in the user's hands almost completely, with limited dev required. So super excited about deploying that. And then just one other thing I want to say in closing, something else I'm excited about, not a product we're making, is, and I just have to add this, is our full digital natives are coming, right? Class of 2028, that's a high school class. That's our first graduating class of full digital natives. And the technology that we're all making today, gosh, hopefully it's deployed by the time they're ready for it, but they will be ready for it. And so I think that's super exciting for our ecosystem.
Absolutely. Brandon, what are you excited about at Talon right now?
I'm really excited that things are finally getting to a point in the industry as a whole. The technology is so good; it's very realistic, and we can do so much with it. We're getting to the point of creating things that we've wanted to create over the years. We've always had this grand vision of these different exciting experiences, whether it's for training or entertainment, and a lot of them we're able to have the opportunity to start building now. We're working with different peripherals and integrating those into our products, such as haptic gloves and different motion platforms. And so it's just so cool to be able to work with the latest and greatest tech and give and blow people's minds. It's just definitely part of our business.
That's fantastic. Cassie, what about DIU?
I think I'm most excited about, seeing some of these goals actually come to pass. Like I said, we're, out there in the commercial sector. Since its inception, 88% of DIU contracts have gone to non-traditional contractors. 40% have never done business with the DoD before. So I feel like we are seeing some movement on growing the national security innovation base. There's still a lot of work to do there, but that's the stuff that gets me most excited, is seeing, kind of the country, the industry mobilize to support the needs and work together.
Awesome. Uncle, what's the latest and greatest at Red 6? What are you guys excited about right now?
I've tried my entire life to avoid saying this because I think it always sounds so condescending to everyone else. But the most exciting thing going on at Red 6, I can't tell you anything about. It's extremely proprietary. But in about a month, there's going to be a massive announcement. And as you know, Sheena, we do media very well at Red 6, and it's incredibly exciting. I couldn't be more proud, and I wish I could be the guy who leaks it all today. But secondary to that, just to a small degree, is just the maturity of where the technology is. We are within weeks, months of quite significant contracts to begin to integrate this at scale into military aircraft, which has been our vision from the first day. When you go from a PowerPoint slide to I have a product that I'm integrating into a platform, and you're seeing the results of that. And so it's an exciting time. I mean, again, a startup is a lot of work, and it is very exciting. But to actually see this in the end user's hand, and in our vernacular, to see this in the warfighter's hand, it's happening now as we speak. That is happening, and so it's really, really energizing the team, especially the guys, the tech guys that work the 12, 14, 16-hour days coding and whatnot, to actually see their code, their equipment being used by the end user. It's energized the whole company. It's like a completely remodel of the company to see that energy state. So it is an exciting time to see the reality, or to see the vision become a reality.
Oh, that's fantastic. It has been a joy. I cannot believe that we are at the end of our time today. But thank you to all of my panelists, to Joanne, Brandon, Uncle, and Cassie. It's been really a fantastic conversation about dual use technology, and amazing to have you all here. Something that we're going to do is at the end of this, and we'll send out a kind of 5 lessons that we learned from the panel. But it's amazing when I listen to the conversation today. I really, even though this is something that I've known about for quite some time, I learned some things. And it's not about, dual use is not about just taking your one idea and making sure you can sell it to a couple of different people, but it's about thinking through how your technology solves real world problems across sectors. And it's something amazing that you're able to look at, that prototypes don't just scale on their own, right? Your mission matters, and you have to think about that usability, that feedback, and that flexibility. And I'm excited to see that some of our companies here today talked about the fact that they can use different resources that exist, not only in our ecosystem, but in the industry ecosystem, whether that's pathways that DIU is creating, the SBIR process, OTAs. I want to make sure that our audience understands, if you ever have any questions about being able to access some of these tools, please reach out to us. our community is just rich with resources. And when you think about one that's front and center, especially in our defense ecosystem, the Central Florida Tech Grove is just a beautiful opportunity, a place for you to gather, to understand. There's these extraordinary meetings that happen consistently with every branch of our military called Pulse, where you can hear about all the latest and greatest. So if you have any questions about the Orlando ecosystem, you want to learn more, you want to know about more resources, please reach out to us at Innovate Orlando, and we're happy to connect you. These are the resources that we are building to make sure when you have the accessibility to an ecosystem, you can really make sure that you're connected and scale your company much faster. So thank you for your time today. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our audience, whether you're a founder, an engineer, creative, or a partner in this work. We appreciate you being connected, and we look forward to sharing more. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sheena.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sheena.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.